The Godfather is the most celebrated mob movie ever made. What almost nobody knows is that the actor who played Luca Brasi, the most feared enforcer in the entire film, was an actual Colombo crime family enforcer. He was not a method actor. He was not a guy from Brooklyn pretending. He was a working arsonist who had shown up to set as a bodyguard for a senior family member. Then Coppola spotted him, and the deal that put him on screen had nothing to do with talent. It had everything to do with the mob shutting down production. Lenny Montana started his career in a wrestling ring, not a courtroom. Born Leonardo Passafaro in Brooklyn on March 13, 1926, he became the Zebra Kid by 1953. He was 6'6" and 270 pounds in his prime. He won his first major title that same year, taking the NWA Central States Heavyweight Championship in Kansas City by defeating Dave Sims. He lost it 2 months later to Sonny Myers, but the loss did not slow him down. By 1956, Montana was wrestling in Texas under the name Len Crosby, alongside Gene Kiniski. They took the NWA Texas Tag Team Championship together in Dallas 4 years later. Montana and Hard Boiled Haggerty won the AWA World Tag Team Championship in Minneapolis by defeating a team called Murder Inc., made up of Stan Kowalski and Tiny Mills. The date was October 4th, 1960. Montana was 34 years old and at the peak of his wrestling career. Then he broke his leg in a match against Vern Gagne in 1961. The injury ended his partnership with Haggerty and forced him to move to Florida to continue wrestling. He wrestled under a mask as the Zebra Kid in Georgia. He feuded with Eddie Graham and even took the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship from him on May 1st, 1962. He won more tag titles with Tarzan Tyler. But the damage was done. By the late 60s, Montana had traded wrestling for the Colombo crime family. That is where the resume gets darker. He became an enforcer and an arsonist. He served time at Rikers Island, and he had a specialty. He told cast and crew on The Godfather exactly how he burned buildings without getting caught. Tie a kerosene-soaked tampon to a mouse's tail and release it inside, or place a lit candle in front of a cuckoo clock so the mechanical bird knocks it over when it pops out. These were not movie stories. This was a Job experience. The mobby nearly killed The Godfather before a single frame was shot. Joe Colombo had founded the Italian-American Civil Rights League in April of 1970. His stated goal was to combat what he called unfair stereotyping of Italian Americans by the federal government and by Hollywood. By June 29th of that year, his first Italian Unity Day rally at Columbus Circle drew 50,000 people. 5 months later, in November, Frank Sinatra headlined a benefit concert for the League at Madison Square Garden. Sammy Davis Jr. showed up to lend support. The League raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single night. By the spring of 1971, Colombo had built a political operation strong enough to make a major Hollywood studio listen. And he had one demand that mattered to Paramount Pictures: remove every mention of Mafia and Cosa Nostra from the Godfather script. Here is what the movie never told you about how close it came to not existing. League members vandalized equipment. They harassed crew members. Death threats arrived at the production office. Producer Al Ruddy met with Colombo and 1,500 League delegates to negotiate. The word mafia appeared only once in an early draft of the script, so removing it cost Paramount less than Colombo thought. But Ruddy still agreed to donate premiere proceeds to the League and to let real mobsters consult on the production. When Gulf and Western executives found out their producer had essentially negotiated with organized crime, they fired him immediately. The parent company that owned Paramount could not be seen cutting deals with the Colombo family. Coppola demanded Ruddy back. The director argued that without Ruddy's truce, There was no film to direct. The studio relented within days. The deal that almost ended Ruddy's career put real mobsters on set as consultants, advisors, and bodyguards. It included a 6'6" ex-wrestler from Brooklyn who weighed 320 pounds named Lenny Montana. The original actor cast as Luca Brasi had died of a stroke before filming could begin. Coppola needed a replacement. Then he saw Montana standing on set, guarding a senior Colombo family member, looking exactly like the character Mario Puzo had written. 6'6", barrel-chested, a face that suggested he had done things that never made it into any police report. Coppola cast him on the spot. No audition, no screen test. The director later said he fell in love with him immediately. He did not know he was casting an actual mob enforcer until later. I would argue he knew exactly what he was doing. The mobsters were already on his set as consultants, pretending he did not know the difference between a bodyguard and an extra required a level of denial nobody on that production had room for. Either way, the camera loved what it saw. One colleague recalled that Montana looked like he could eat raw meat. That was not a compliment, that was a description. Here is the scene that made the casting genius. Luca Brasi approaches Don Corleone at the wedding to pay his respects. He delivers a stilted, rehearsed speech. Brasi says, "Don Corleone, I am honored and grateful that you have invited me to your daughter's wedding, on the day of your daughter's wedding." The line is awkward, almost childlike. Coming from the most feared killer in the Corleone organization, it is unsettling in a way that a polished delivery never could have been. That was not acting. Montana was so terrified of performing opposite Marlon Brando that he kept fumbling his lines. A crew member noticed Montana sitting outside the set before every take, scrunching a scrap of paper with his dialogue written on it, muttering the words to himself over and over. The man who set buildings on fire for the Colombo crime family was trembling at the thought of speaking to an actor. The director did something brilliant with that fear. He added an entire scene because of it. That moment where we see Brasi rehearsing his speech before meeting the Don, practicing alone, visibly nervous, exists only because Montana was actually doing that off camera. Coppola shot it and put it in the film. He turned a production problem into character development. The most feared enforcer in New York becomes human in the space of 40 seconds because the actor's real terror bled into the performance. James Caan tried to fix it his own way. Coppola had told Caan to do something to loosen Montana up. Caan wrote an obscenity on a piece of tape and stuck it on Montana's tongue. When Montana delivered his line, the whole crew saw it and burst out laughing. Then Brando one-upped the prank. When they reset to film for real, Brando had written the same phrase on his own tongue. When Montana said Don Corleone, Brando opened his mouth and showed him the response. A real mob enforcer, pranked by two Hollywood actors. On the set of a movie, the mob had threatened to destroy. That is the scene behind the scene, and that is also how tense the set actually was. Mob guys and movie stars trading jokes while the production still operated under the shadow of Joe Colombo's Italian-American Civil Rights League. The novel's Luca Brasi is darker than anything the film shows. Mario Puzo wrote him as a psychopath and drug addict with an origin story too horrifying for any studio. In the book, Brasi forced a midwife to throw his own newborn child into a furnace, then murdered the child's mother. Coppola wisely cut all of it. Montana's nervous, almost childlike portrayal softened the monster into something more complex. The film gave audiences a killer who could also be afraid. The novel gave them a man who had burned his own baby alive. I believe the softening is what saved the character. A psychopath who burns his own infant does not become iconic. A killer who trembles in front of a Don does. The bulletproof vest scene is pure misdirection. Brasi puts on a vest before meeting Sollozzo and Tattaglia at a Manhattan bar. The audience expects a shootout. Instead, Tattaglia's men pin his hand to the bar with a knife and strangle him with piano wire. The vest protected nothing that mattered. Later, the Corleones receive it wrapped around a dead fish with no note attached. Sonny reads the message instantly. Luca sleeps with the fishes. The phrase has roots going back to Homer's Iliad, where it meant death by drowning. The Godfather made it part of American vernacular. Montana's death scene taught a generation of viewers how to threaten someone without saying a word. Montana allegedly beat up Al Ruddy during filming. According to research conducted for the Offer miniseries, a mobster hired Montana to assault the producer over some production dispute. He delivered the beating. Then he showed up to his acting job the next morning as if nothing had happened. Ruddy apparently never held it against him. The same man who attacked the producer was also collecting a paycheck from the production. The same man who put on the Luca Brasi costume had done worse things without a costume. That was The Godfather set in 1971. Joe Colombo never saw The Godfather finished. On June 28, 1971, Colombo was shot once in the head and twice in the neck at his second Italian Unity Day rally. Jerome Johnson walked up to him in Columbus Circle and pulled the trigger. Colombo's bodyguards killed Johnson immediately on the spot. The boss survived, but remained paralyzed and in a near vegetative state for 7 years. He never spoke publicly again. He died of cardiac arrest on May 22, 1978, at age 54. The man who threatened to shut down The Godfather spent his final years in a hospital bed without ever seeing the film he tried to stop. Montana, the enforcer he had sent to the set, became immortal in the same movie. Police eventually concluded Johnson was a lone gunman, but that finding was disputed. Some in the Colombo family blamed Joe Gallo. Others theorized Carlo Gambino had ordered the hit because Colombo's public activism was drawing too much attention to organized crime. The Truth died with Jerome Johnson in Columbus Circle. Hit subscribe for more stories where the movie is the cover and the real mob is doing the casting. The Godfather premiered on March 14, 1972. It became the highest grossing film of that year and redefined how Hollywood portrayed organized crime. Montana's Luca Brasi had maybe 5 minutes of screen time across nearly 3 hours of film. Those 5 minutes made him unforgettable. His film career lasted exactly a decade after that premiere. He appeared in approximately 25 productions, almost always playing thugs or intimidating muscle. He showed up in Fingers in 1978 and The Jerk in 1979. He worked with Jackie Chan in Battle Creek Brawl in 1980. He did television episodes of Kojak and Magnum PY. He played heavies in Defiance, Below the Belt, Evil Speak, All the Marbles, and Pandemonium. He even appeared in an Italian Godfather knockoff called The Other Side of the Godfather in 1973. Hollywood saw what Coppola had captured and kept reaching for it. Montana kept delivering the same menace because that was all anyone ever asked him to deliver. He co-wrote and appeared in Bloodsong in 1982. That was his last credit. He never played another role as memorable as Luca Brasi. The industry knew him as a guy who could look threatening on camera, which meant the industry only ever asked him to look threatening on camera. His entire post-Godfather career was a series of variations on the same role he had played for real in Brooklyn. Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk, played Lenny Montana in The Offer. The Paramount Plus series dramatized the making of The Godfather across 10 episodes. In 2022, the casting was appropriate. One bodybuilder portraying another, one larger-than-life physique standing in for another. The series understood that Montana's story was not about a criminal who got lucky. It was about what happens when Hollywood and organized crime end up on the same payroll. Lenny Montana died on May 12, 1992. He died of a heart attack in Lindenhurst, New York. He was 66 years old. His wife, Sylvia, and son, Lenny Jr., survived him. The man who made audiences believe Luca Brasi was the most dangerous enforcer in New York had spent his final decade playing variations of that same role in B-movies and television. He was never Luca Brasi again. He was only ever himself, cast by a director who saw exactly what the camera needed and found it already standing on his set. The fear was real. The violence was real. The wrestling career, the arson techniques, the Rikers sentence, the Colombo connection, all of it was real. Montana did not play a mob enforcer. He simply showed up as one, and Coppola was smart enough to point a camera at him. I think that nervous speech in front of Brando is the most honest scene in the film. The most feared man in the Corleone organization, trembling like a child, trying to remember the words he practiced 100 times. It works because it was never a performance. It was a Colombo enforcer who had set buildings on fire and served time in prison, standing in front of the greatest actor of his generation, terrified of saying the wrong thing. The Godfather got a lot of things right about the mob. What it got most right was casting one. You just watched a Colombo arsonist become the most feared character in The Godfather because a director pointed a camera at him. Subscribe for more stories about the real mob behind the movies.